Yo, what's up? This is Fantasy Fling with DFS Army, and this is another week in review. We are looking back at the Millie Maker, what won week 11 in the Millie Maker. Little MME strategy of top DFS pros, big, huge DFS Army wins, and then a little cash lineup review. So let's get into it. All right, so let's start with some big DFS Army wins. This was posted in the Discord. Several of these were. Matt Jick, 11. The Millie Maker placed 6th place, second week using the Dom Station, aka DFS Army's Domination Station, the tool that we use that you're seeing here to attack mass multi-entry tournaments like the Millie Maker, like the Pocket Cup, like the Fleet, all these different contests that you see. Second week using it, cashed 69 out of 150 for 20K profit, almost took it down. 6th place, good on him. Hoagies, 69 here. Afternoon only, 1st place, 72 hundo. We got a Kanger here. Thanks, Burnsy. Of course, talking about Burns, Adam Burns, the Shark Lab. Late Dorch TD dropped me from 1st and 4th to this. So almost took down the Flea. Went from 1st to obviously 5th and 8th. But then we still had a member DFS Army subscriber take down the Flea, 50K. Jacoby Brissett, triple stack with double tight end build. So Jacoby plus Wilson plus Dorch plus Kittle with Trey McBride and a George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey bring back. And obviously double tight end build there. Bijan, Tedero McMillan. So smashed 250 points. Would have been just about good enough to win the Millie. So huge week for DFS Army VIPs. And guys, if you want to join DFS Army, use the tools that get the calls from Burns, all the different calls that help our subscribers win each and every week, win big. Use code FANTASYFLING. Get you 10% off VIP subscription. That link to the sign up will be in the video description. So let's go ahead and go over to the Millie Maker. So yeah, he would have, Taos 14 would have won the Millie Maker with his score had he entered that, of course, into the Millie. But hey, not going to cry about 50K for sure. Jacoby Brissett was what took it down. So we basically saw exactly, what the nuts lineup was. This one, 248 points. Deepak 2 took down the Millie with Jacoby Brissett, triple sack. Christian McCaffrey bring back. This one did not have Kittle. Had Bijan, Tedero, McMillan. The biggest difference between what won in this lineup was really just the 1-versus-1 between Aaron Jones and I'm guessing it was actually probably a 2-versus-2 versus the defense. So Aaron Jones and Kittle. But yeah, this lineup had Kittle and Texans D. So the 2-versus-2 of Texans D and Kittle versus Aaron Jones and Pittsburgh D was the difference, in between what was actually the nuts lineup there, 250 points. But nonetheless, this one won the Millie. It's pretty interesting because Deepak 2 here has, only 113 unique out of 150. So I'm guessing a lot of these lineups were quite shocky. Not really setting exposure caps. So yeah, some of these were duplicated here. 178%. Let's see this one, 184%. Really sharp DFS players, of course. Good company to be in. But yeah, some of these lineups were very chalky. So that definitely explains it. But good on Deepak for taking this down in week 11. Trying to see were there any other. Okay, so there was obviously the Arizona triple sack with Christian McCaffrey bring back. This also had the Bijan and Tedero McMillan secondary stack. That is something that is big that we see a lot in winning Millie Maker lineups. The majority of them, I think it hits about 70% of the time. Pittsburgh D uncorrelated, Aaron Jones uncorrelated. So a lot of correlation here with basically Aaron Jones and Pittsburgh D as the one-off. As far as value, the best value was going to be Steelers D, 6x the salary. Also, Greg Dortch, 5x, Ted Earl McMillan, 6x, and Michael Wilson, top value on the slate, 9x the salary. And I got to say, part of the reason you see so many DFS Army VIPs winning was because when we ran the optimals this week, it was just jamming in Cardinals with a Christian McCaffrey bring back. So if you just ran optimize with DFS Army Domination Station, of course you got to, like a couple players. It won't just let you run optimize. But if you, like a couple players, whether that be CMC or Michael Wilson or McBride, you were basically going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the winning players in the Millie Maker lineup. The optimals we were running were all over these guys. So, the wins, not very surprising this week. And obviously tremendous value with McMillan, Dortch, Brissett, like that whole stack absolutely crushed it. And then Christian McCaffrey just under 4x, but just raw points, 35 points at 9K. So, really good from a value standpoint there. And then the biggest thing is, again, we continue to see running back in the flex that is dominated this year. 8 out of 10 or 8 out of 11, I think Millie Maker winners have had running back in the flex. Second place in the Millie was Jacoby Brissett, Michael Wilson, Trey McBride. So that one didn't have Dortch, but it had AJ Barner. So another double tight end. I got to tell you, we are going to see a lot more double tight end in this review when we do the MME strategy of DFS Pros. Want to see what Fantasy Bros did with his builds. Third place, double tight end. So that was kind of a constant with a lot of top DFS players, and the Fantasy Bros definitely a DFS Pro with the double tight end. And Kittle and McBride, obviously these are two studs that are perfect for the double tight end because they bring the ceiling. So, a 5K tight end that's, when there's not like extreme running back value, but you get a 5K tight end who can score 30 plus points. That is typically when these, double tight ends are type builds are going to be more probable to hit and, have that high ceiling. But, and yeah, the Christian McCaffrey and Bijan, it's interesting. This is typically you wouldn't see in a lot of builds. You wouldn't see these type of running backs together like this. A 9K back and an $8,300 back. But when you have such a cheap value stack that hits, that's exactly when you're going to get, these high-end players, which really McBride, 6,300, not cheap for a tight end, right? Nico Collins, 6,700, Bijan, 8,300, Christian McCaffrey, 9K, all because Jacoby Brissett, Michael Wilson, and Greg Dortch absolutely just went nuclear for the three. Like the average, fantasy points per dollar for those three was really the value you needed for the rest of the lineup to come together. And then before we look into Fantasy Bros exposures, want to see what Magic 11 did with his builds. 148 unique first. And yeah, just this is the consistency you want, right? Jacoby Brissett in that first lineup, and then Brock Purdy in this one. But 6th place, 16th place, 25th place, you'll see kind of a lot of the same. Now, this one stacked Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Jennings, and Kittle. But, a lot of same Wilson, Dortch, McBride. So attacking that same game environment there. Jacoby Myers in this build, they got 6th place. So double tight end, Michael Wilson, Jacoby Myers. That's the difference there. Just, wanted to have Dortch. Other than that, like this is very close. This is a 2v2 away from winning the Millie, of course. Curious just to check exposures real quick. So a lot of Wilson, Puka, Chase. It sucked having any Chase. Chase would have definitely been the fade. Tons of Trey McBride. So yeah, that'll do it. 55% Trey McBride. A lot of Christian McCaffrey. Bijan. Chase Brown had a decent day. Not a tournament winning day, but a decent day. And a good amount of Jacoby Brissett. So just going with what the DS was giving you, but also clearly went way above consensus in a few spots, and that was the difference. Definitely was not doing a conservative exposure cap on certain players like McBride, McCaffrey, maybe just overall doing an exposure cap, but maybe going above in a few spots. Hard to tell without asking. Let's take a look at Fantasy Bros' exposures. So the first lineup, double tight end, then double tight end. So a lot of double tight end. And you guys, you're going to see in a little bit, like, you're going to see some crazy double tight end. I might have to count how much exposure Fantasy Bros had to double tight end, but you're going to be shocked here in a second when we look at the next guy. So his exposures were a lot of Michael Wilson, so kind of the same, right? And the thing with your Chase is, like, you'll see with a lot of these lineups, like, as long as you weren't like way over the field on Chase, like, it was pretty much fine as long as you had a lot of Cardinals and Christian McCaffrey. So double the field on Dortch, double a lot of Michael Wilson, and then pretty flat Trey McBride. So way over on Trey McBride. So over on, the guys that you needed. So it wasn't just like one lucky lineup. A lot of good leverage here. Now, Jaylen Warren, that sucked. He got hurt. What? Kenneth Gainwell was being used too much anyway, so I don't know how much it would have mattered. But you wanted to kind of be under on Jaylen Warren or just even there. Dowdle, Jacobs. So yeah, nothing that like is too crushing there exposure wise. And then yeah, positive leverage on Jacoby Brissett. Titans D, they were looking really good most of the day. They ended up doing okay. But yeah, I think these exposures, like, not too surprising. Nothing too crazy out of the ordinary. Saw Giant Squid made it up to the top. Wanted to check what Giant Squid did. Giant Squid has definitely won the Millie Maker before. Very sharp DFS player. And kind of the same thing, right? It's that Jacoby +3 with the Christian McCaffrey bring back and the Bijan Robinson pairing. And then it was really just, those other 3 spots. Like, what did you do with those other 3 spots? This one had Etienne and Wan'Dale Robinson, so not nearly enough. Nailed the Pittsburgh D, 15th place. And then, yeah, it seems like this was just the one lineup that kind of made it to the top. None of these were really close. From what I remember, Giant Squid does not typically do a ton of like very high exposures. I think he kind of goes in a couple spots. Yeah, I mean, just a little over the field, right? Michael Wilson. Just, 22% Drake London, more than triple the field. But, like, we're not seeing, like, anything over 25% really so far. Under on Jamar Chase, so that was helpful, being under there. And then very flat. Under on McBride. Kyle Pitts. Loved Kyle Pitts. Jaylen Warren, so yeah, 46% Jaylen Warren, but he's 40% owned. So again, not way over the field. So just really kind of a couple spots. Tennessee D, significantly over there. Kyle Pitts, significantly over. And that definitely hurt. Other than that, what you'll see with giant squid, I've seen this before when looking at giant squids exposures, is a lot of, a couple spots where go really over the field, but then just very flat exposures. Now, this was crazy to me. I looked at Udi-cow's builds and I noticed a lot of double tight end. So you won't see it at the top because obviously Christian McCaffrey was optimal. Like we saw the winning Millie Maker lineup, right? It was 3 running backs. It was Christian McCaffrey, is Bijan Robinson. God, now I'm blanking on the other one. Just look at my sheet here. Oh, and it was Aaron Jones. Yeah. So, but Aaron Jones wasn't really, he didn't post a gotta have a score. But then you see, but anyways, it was 3 running backs. But then you see like a lot of these double tight ends, a lot of double tight end builds. And when I went through, I found that he had 87 double tight end builds out of 150. And I was like, wow, that's a lot. And then I went to next week. I went to last slate. I was like, was this just like this slate specific? I went to the last week's slate and he had over 100. So really crazy to see. I'm going to have a lot of time off next week and I plan to back test. It's interesting. I was giving it a lot of thought. I think, and Udi-cow is like probably the best DFS player in the world today. And Udi-cow has won the Millie Maker multiple times over the past couple of years. And I think the process with it is like you have to be willing to throw away so many lineups because you're going to get a lot of dead lineups when you do double tight end. And I'll show you what I mean here, right? Like you'll get some snowflakes like Kyle Pitts, like because double tight end is such a position of high volatility. It's the highest position of variance, double tight end, and same thing Kyle Pitts here. Double tight end and defense, or tight end and defense, like both of them. But when you do get the two things that add up, like when you get a Trey McBride and a George Kittle, like you really create a monster because you get such good value. So yeah, you'll have like Jonnu Smith. Some of these lineups that will like went way down were even like a Jonnu Smith and like Pat Freiermuth. So you're going to get a lot of these lineups that are dead like this because you get a 0 from Kyle Pitts. But when you do get that lineup near the top, like you really put yourself in a good shot to win the Millie Maker. Now, that said, running back has been dominating a flex at an 80% point this year, 80% rate. So I don't know that I would play that way, like unless you have the bankroll like a Udi-cow who could just throw away 150 lineups each and every week and be like, yeah, but it's going to hit, eventually, and I'm going to win it. And that's certainly what he's done. I definitely think he, at least in the past couple of weeks, and I'll probably investigate this further on other slates, definitely seems like he's just letting double tight end ride and not limiting it. And maybe just because it projected better the past couple of weeks because there wasn't like a ton of running back value like there was, 2 weeks ago when we had the Kyle Monungai value. And then the optimizer would just be throwing Kyle Monungai in there. And you wouldn't get as much double tight end. So you're really just kind of playing it, whatever the slate gives to you. So something to investigate further, do some back testing in that. Let's kind of see some of his exposures, and then we will wrap this up with the cash game review. So a lot of Xavier Worthy. That's not surprising to me. I heard some of his content throughout the week, and he was pretty heavy on the Mahomes stacks. And I got to tell you, watching this game as a Broncos fan, Mahomes' second play of the game overthrew Worthy for what would have been a bomb touchdown, like a 60-yard touchdown. The Broncos fan in me was like, yes. The DFS player in me that had Mahomes to Worthy stacks kind of wanted that play to hit. So Udi-cow was clearly way over on Worthy. here, and that was one of his stands of the slate. Over on Michael Wilson, over on Khalil Shakir. It made sense, especially with Keon Coleman being inactive for that game. Just like you would think more balls were going to go to Keon Coleman. Just even with Jamar Chase. Very flat in a lot of this. Trey McBride, George Kittle, Kyle Pitts. So obviously you see this tight end exposure, and you could understand we're going to get a lot of double tight end. A lot of Christian McCaffrey, a lot of ETN, under on Jaylen Warren, good amount of Rico Dowdle. So this definitely hit. I think this should have hit. And honestly, Rico Dowdle didn't have a smash score, but that touchdown was so close. It was a callback. They would have put him over 20 points and definitely would have been a better day for him. 6,800, like he might have found his way into the nuts lineup if he had gotten over 20. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy. There was the Worthy, not a ton of Mahomes. Yeah, a good amount of Mahomes, so that makes sense. 17% Mahomes, and then obviously the 45% Worthy. Under on Brissett, that was a little surprising. So the quarterbacks he had the most exposure to: Purdy, Josh Allen, Mahomes, McCarthy just even on the field on Herbert. Yeah, Mahomes was the highest exposure, and that made sense. I think the whole process with Mahomes was Patrick Surtain was out, and the Chiefs have normally historically been really good coming off of a bye. So obviously it didn't work out, but I understood the process there. But that is going to wrap it up for the MME strategy portion of the show. Last thing we're going to do, the cash game review. Now, when I tell you that the optimals were pushing Jacoby Brissett +3 with a McCaffrey bring back, like it was just minimal adjustments. This is what you were getting. And I loved my cash lineup this week. I was concerned about the QB +3. I typically have a rule against playing this way in cash, but the value was so good with Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch, and they project so well that it just made sense with Marvin Harrison Jr. being out and the 49ers being very bad against slot wide receivers, just being banged up on defense. I thought this game had a lot of shootout potential, and I just went with it. And, this was one of those slates where, I just went with my gut and, kind of went against some of the rules that I have, which is paying up at tight end. Trey McBride is basically been a wide receiver 1, and he's only 6,300. So the value is just too good for the projection, the elite volume, production, just everything. It just made too much sense. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey was the top ownership on the slate, the top pay up option. When we go to, I guess we're not going to go to my cheat sheet because I'm not going to log in there. But when we go to, we went to the cheat sheet and, we looked at the chalkboard and everything. Christian McCaffrey had the top projection on the slate and ownership. This is something DFS Army VIPs get. By the way, guys, if you like these reviews, let me know. Hit that like button and make sure to subscribe to the channel. But this is something DFS Army VIPs get. And, it kind of helps guide us to which plays might be the best on the slate. Jaylen Warren, he did get hurt. And, it was it was a smash spot. The Bengals give up the most fantasy points to opposing running back. So I think it was a good process play. Just didn't work out, but it didn't matter because he was chalk. Chase Brown, same thing with Perrine out. He had been looking very good. The usage was way up, 14 targets last week. And then he smashed again, really for cash anyway, 18 points. Jacoby Brissett had been averaging over 20 fantasy points per game. So this made a ton of sense too. Chase did not get there, but he was so highly owned that it really did not matter. And that's why we don't get cute cash, and we typically play the chalk, which was also the value guys who did hit. Michael Wilson, Dortch was the one play where it kind of went off the board a little bit, but it was just trust the X's and O's of it and the value, and that ended up working out well. And then we love paying down a defense. So good cash week, actually 100% of the head-to-heads. And hopefully we can keep that going into next week. So that's going to wrap this one up. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We got lots of content coming your way. Specifically tomorrow, we have the draft battle. Me, Geek, we got Cecil Lammy from Football Guys hopping on. Excited for that one. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss it. We will see you then. Take care.